Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Morgan Klein, and I'm the Information Systems Manager for APOPO. And I have the privilege of being both your moderator and a panelist presenter for our panel on common operational data sets and streamlined reporting in Mine Action. As we begin, I'd like to set the stage not just for today's panel discussion, but for a broader conversation about where information management sits in the mine action sector and where we believe it needs to go. This panel is convened in response to a consensus across the sector that while data is more available than ever, our capacity to manage it cohesively and strategically still varies widely across programs, organizations, and operational contexts. These variations have led to a patchwork of templates, systems, and definitions, each responding to its own pressures, but often at the cost of sector-wide standardization. Information management in mine action has long been categorized as a technical or support service, one focused on storing data, running systems, and producing reports. But the reality we increasingly recognize is this: when IM is properly embedded in program design, aligned with operational planning and methodology, and built to serve both strategic and donor-facing objectives, it transforms into something far more powerful. It becomes a backbone for strategic planning and the connective tissue between evidence and action. The UNMAS guidelines make very clear that information is not just a byproduct of mine action. It is the foundation of its management. It enables us to design effective operations, measure performance, comply with international obligations, and crucially, to demonstrate impact. And yet the potential of IM is still not fully realized across all programs. In some places, we're still contending with fragmentation, different templates, terminology, and database structures, inconsistent quality control measures, and a lack of shared definitions. In spite of these challenges, information management is making leaps and bounds at rates never before seen. We're witnessing important and tangible progress that needs to be documented and recognized to enhance further coordination. Integration of new data sets, conflict mapping, migration flows, food security, environmental baselines into mine action operations is allowing us to situate mine action in relation to the humanitarian sector at large. These integrations are not just academic exercises. They're helping to shape how we define risk, determine threat, and allocate resources. They help us understand not only how we define risk, determine threat, not only where to clear, but why, for whom, and to what end. This integration, when supported by standardized operational data sets, enhances the relevance and usability of our IM systems. And that's why we're here today. This session is designed to move us closer to a shared understanding for what a fit-for-purpose IM framework looks like. We'll explore the role of minimum data standards in facilitating interoperability across programs and the ways in which common operational data sets can reduce duplication and increase efficiency. We'll hear about concrete examples where normalization efforts, particularly around field names and definitions, are creating the conditions for streamlined reporting. And we'll look at how information systems can support not just clearance operations, but coordination, transparency, and longer-term development. We're joined by a group of panelists who bring deep knowledge, technical expertise, and operational insight to our discussion. Angela DeSantis, Deputy Head of Operations at FSD, will share insights on integrating data sets from partners like FAO into operational planning and on the importance of national-led standardization for meaningful normalization. High Excellency Surat Sen, Deputy Secretary General of Cambodia Mine Action Authority, brings a national authority perspective on how IM frameworks are built and operationalized. Clement Manier, Global Partnership Advisor at MAG, will contribute from his extensive programmatic experience, aligning reporting tools with national and international requirements. Myself, Morgan Klein, will present APOPO's work in the variation of data we collect and how standardizing key fields across our system can enable better sector-wide reporting and planning. and Henrik Rydberg, Program Manager for IMSMA at the GICHD, will present on IMSMA core, minimum data requirements, and how the Geneva Center continues to support the sector in standardization. After we hear from the panelists, we'll open the floor to discussion. I encourage you to ask questions and share your own experiences. Because in order to build a better information management system across the sector, it will take all of us. So let's begin. I hand the floor to Angela.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I would like to present you FSD experience, and through our experience also to set up the scene for the discussion, being the first panelist. And most of the topic I will touch will be discussed more into detail by my fellow panelists. So the first topic of this side event is the minimum data requirement. As an operator, we need to collect data that can be reported to donor. We need to be compliant also with reporting requirement from the national authority. And also we have our internal data that we need to collect in order to record our operations. So the minimum data requirement is the subset of data that can be collected for all of these three purposes. But when we talk about minimum data requirements, we are not only talking about the format of the data. We would like to move beyond just square meter clear, the number of items found, and think about also the interoperability, how we can collect effectively this data, how we can share this data among different actors. The idea of moving from outputs to outcomes will be discussed further by Clément. And also we know that in the IMAS, there is a mention to minimum data requirement, that there is a suggestion, and this is also will be described more into detail by Henrik. But why we need this minimum data? The main objective is to collect global statistics. If we don't have consistent and coherent data, it's very difficult as a sector to build these global statistics. And also, we need to better define our activities and our costs. For example, we have talked a lot about innovative funding. But if we cannot define the cost of our activities, if we cannot quantify the risk associated to our activities, it's very difficult to open these new markets for mine action. Also, we need to better evaluate our impact. If we don't have the baseline, we cannot measure the change after our activity. And we all do in certain way, but probably there are different ways and more efficient way to do that. And also another point is important to understand residual contamination. It's one of the parts is never quantified, is never taken into account too much in the long-term planning. So as the last point, the utility of having minimum data requirement also is the ability to create global IM systems. But of course, any operator, we develop our own system. It's global for us, for all our programs, but it's not the same one from everyone. The one we developed at FSD is based on a web application. We have, of course, a part which allow us to manage our users, define profiles, define also activity that can be performed inside the application. We can collect digitally all the data, and we can consolidate the data into reports. We can create workflows, so all these reports, all this data that are collected, they go through different checkpoints, so there are different people, the team leader, the supervisor, the QA/QC officer, checking this data, and then we can connect directly this data into IMSMA. This is the case of Ukraine, where we developed this solution at the beginning for Ukraine, and we have this ability to connect directly to IMSMA and to pull the data and push the data to IMSMA, which means we can publish our report into IMSMA, but we can also extract information from IMSMA. And this is the way that when we develop our system, we call back all the previous reports, so we complete all our data sets since the beginning of operation in Ukraine. We also can integrate other sources of data. You can see in the screen, all our NTS team, they have drones. We use the drones for a close-up to identify evidences. We use them to do mapping. We use them also to mark inaccessible point, for example. And also we are integrated all other solutions when possible, like artificial intelligence for analysis of this data. We are also supporting testing of new technology like FindMinds. And we have also this progress report where we can mark every day the progress of each one of our teams. In addition to that, we move from data to information. We create our indicators, our statistics. We have our dashboards integrated in the system. And something that is quite useful, we have donor reports, so we can share the link directly with the donors. The donors can connect and to a subset of our data, which are related to the activities they are funding, and they can also verify the progress, collect information, and this is also building confidence and transparency with the donors. So having the kind of system is an opportunity for us because we can connect directly into IMSMA. This is also saving a lot of intermediate steps in order to interchange this information with the national authorities. Enhance our QA/QC systems because we can force this workflow, and we can also force the content of specific field, so we are sure that we are not accepting error in the formats. We can systematize our data, and as I mentioned, we can build confidence with the donor. However, there are some challenges for that. The connection with IMSMA is the main opportunity, but also the main challenge. If we cannot talk directly to IMSMA, so it's a less of an opportunity to have such a system because then we need to print the document and then interchange the document in a different format. Another challenge is the customization per country. So now we want to deploy the same system in other countries. Of course, we need to adapt to the specific workflows, to the specific format, the specific reports, in order to be compliant with the national mine action standards. And also, these requirements are changing quite a lot. We see a very frequent change in the format, additional information that is needed, some changing on the time and the requirement. This is reflecting in our system. If you have a manual system, it's just put the information in a different form. But if you have a digital system, all these changes can have some impact in different parts of the system. So from our point of view, we need a minimum volume of operation to make it sustainable and an opportunity to have this kind of system as an operator. And we are always thinking about the long-term sustainability. If we have massive changes in all of our countries at the same time, it's difficult to adjust the system we have developed and also to find the resources for that. As I mentioned before, we integrated all the sources of data, not only the data that we collect directly. Of course, when we think about other sources of data for mine action, conflict data is the first idea we all have in our mind. There are plenty of data, especially for the current crisis like Ukraine. So all the craters mapping, bomb shelling, where the position of the front line are, and so on. But also I would like to call your attention to other data that could be useful for mine action. If we think that do no harm approach, which is our main principle, is not only related to the mine action contamination, we need to avoid having negative impact, and we need also to avoid generating new vulnerabilities or complicate indirectly new vulnerabilities. So we need to take into account the environment, the cultural situation, long-term sustainability, social cohesion. So connected to these points, we can find other sources of data. For example, we need to understand conflict drivers because based on that, we can understand also how the conflict development and why the contamination is distributed in a certain way. Migration data. IOM now is part of the area of responsibility of mine action, are attending most of the meetings, and if we work in border areas or we have cross-border projects, it's very critical to understand the migration flow, and also they do the characterization of the beneficiary of our work. So we need to understand, we can map other vulnerabilities, other needs, without collecting again the same information with the same target population. Also, we had this collaboration with FAO and WFP. So we are introducing information about crop cycle, land productivity. I will show in the next slide more into detail this point. So the value of the land, how to minimize our impact on the land when we do demining, but also how can we promote productivity after the demining. How to understand environmental impacts. We have seen also in the plenaries, we have new tools, we have the new, the updated UNMAS on environment, how we can implement the green field tool, for example, of how we can evaluate our impact if we don't have data on environment. As I mentioned, for example, if we take into account soil, productivity, crops, cycles, of course, the productivity of a land can be taken into account in a prioritization phase of our activities, targeting the most productive land in order to allow the use of the land very quickly after the conflict. But we need to take into account this information for planning purposes. In order to do our risk reduction, risk mitigation during our operation, we need to understand the cycle of the crops. We need to understand the time since the last time that these crops was harvested in this area. We did a pilot study with FAO also to understand the modification on the soil where we use the mining machines in Ukraine. So there are some mitigation action we can take after to reduce the impact. And it's a way also to consolidate our internal best practices. So if we want to integrate external data, the important point is to identify which data are critical. What's the useful information? Having a lot of data doesn't mean having a lot of useful information, and sometimes can overflow in our system with a lot of numbers and statistics. It's not the best way to understand or to have an added value in our system. We need to also understand this data, the accuracy they have, the frequency, the format, how we can access them, if they are compatible to our workflow. And then we need to integrate them in our workflow. So from my point of view, data normalization should be a collaborative effort. We have seen since the first days, there are so many actors involved on the data collection, requirement, management, that we really need to be all on the same page to make it possible. There is a need of a sector-wide standardization, so defining the structure of the database, definition. We have so many definitions. There are sometimes conflicting, so we call a number of an item all with the same name, but actually the measure we are collecting is completely different. We need to improve interoperability, because this is the only way to interchange data. And we need to improve the decision-making process and analytics based on this data. Of course, in order to achieve all these points, there are different challenges like ownership, legacy system, so all the information that we need to take into account, funds, data formats. So we really need to plan and collaborate to achieve this point. So as a conclusion, the operational integration of external data improve planning, risk reduction, impact analysis, but of course requires clear structure and shared understanding. Our experience showed that it's feasible to have tailored system, but we really need a coordination to avoid also parallel development or duplicate in our developments, especially now when the shortage of funds is quite important. And finally, this sector-wide normalization offers major benefits, but also it's complex. So I will leave a question for the discussion at who should lead this process and how we can really make this collaboration effective. So I'll leave it like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I think it really highlights the great work that FSD is doing in bringing other data sets into the mine action framework. When we're going into our operations, we're no longer siloed only in the context of mine action operations, but also in our relationship into development and other humanitarian initiatives. And I guess when I was thinking about this panel and bringing this idea up and looking for examples, another question I would pose today is, are we all sourcing from the same external data sets? If we're talking about migration flows, do we have a trusted place that we go to to document migration? Or are we reaching out into the world of diverse information sources which can be conflicting? So I'm really happy to see that example. Also highlighting the need for transformation of data consistently over different contexts really does highlight the need for standardization. So thank you, Angela, for your presentation. I'll now hand the floor over to our Deputy Secretary General of the Cambodian Mine Action Authority, Sarah Town. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Morgan, for coordinating this session, and thank you for inviting me to take a part of this side event and to share our perspective to this event. My name is Sarah. I'm the Deputy Secretary General of the Cambodian Mine Action and Victim Assistance Authority, CMAA. Please allow me to share with you briefly an overview of the Cambodia contamination. May you know that Cambodian contamination results from the internal and regional conflict from the mid-1960s until the war ended in 1998. And you look at the map, on the map right now, on the left-hand side, in the western part of the country impacted by landmine. And on the right-hand side is impacted by the cluster nuisance and ERW. Mine and ERW have killed and injured nearly 65,000 people in Cambodia since 1979 until March 2025. If you look at this slide, I'm talking about the history of information management, and may you know that the mine action in Cambodia start from the 1992, and CMAA, National Authority, was established in 2000. And if you look at the timeline in 2007, CMAA just established the database unit with funding and supporting from NBA. So at that time, we start to organize the database unit without the system in place because we're starting from scratch. That's why most people in the database unit using the Microsoft Access and Microsoft Excel to perform the data collection and data analysis. So we find out to manage data for the National Authority. And we also got support from GICHD to deploy the IMSMA legacy from IMSMA version 1, 2, 3, and until IMSMA version 6. So right now we're running the IMSMA core fully with support with technical support by GICHD. So we are saying GICHD for providing technical support to the National Authority. And how the CMA coordinate and manage the data collection and data flow from the operator and stakeholder. If you look at this diagram, the National Authority, CMA, are sitting in the middle, and we coordinate with the national international operator to collect data, and then we need to make sure that all data up to date need to share each other. And then we also share the data with the provincial mine action body also, because in Cambodia right now we have 25 provinces and we have 25 provincial mine action committee working on the ground and to support preparing the cleaner work plan on the ground. That's why data are very important. If we do not have data in place, if we do not centralize data in place, we cannot make data to support the planning and prioritization, especially for the clearing on the ground and to support the community. if you look at this CMA IMSMA core user interface, and right now you look like this one because we already decorate and improve our interface. In 2019, GICHD helped a national authority to set up the IMSMA core system on the cloud server, and IMSMA core is the GIS enterprise. CMA are doing all the customization on the system with the GICHD support. IMSMA core is built on new platform with cutting-edge technology, enabling many customization on the system. IMSMA core is like a new home for mines in Cambodia right now. We have to build and decorate it by ourselves. How CMA perform IMSMA workflow, how we control data. If you look at the picture here, the national database sitting in the middle, and we working with the operator and our field staff also. So on the left-hand side is our field staff. We have the QA, QC team working on the ground, and they collected and submit data directly from the ground to the national database. And those data need to go through QA, QC performance before we do approval into system, because we make sure that those data is accuracy and correct on the ground. If we find any error, we need to contact with our field staff officer on the ground. And we also work with the operator, and we need to make sure that operator must submit and the data to the national database. And when we have found any error, we report back to the operator for correcting and resubmit it to the national authority. So all data before we approval into the national database for supporting to the decision, we always perform data QA/QC before we do approval. Today we have two ways for data submission from international and national operator. The first way, operator, they can submit data from their own system direct to the national authority. And second way, operator, they can use the survey 123 that have been deployed by the national authority to operator, and they can entry through the survey 123 application and submit direct to the national database. This slide, I just want to highlight how the survey 123 work, because we already design and digitize the digital form and put into the operation for the operator. So right now we can collect point and also the polygon through the survey 123 application from the ground and submit it to the national database. All the standardized form here you see have been discussed and agreed through the technical working group that I will show you in the next slide. So right now we have the standardized form for the Myanmar. For Myanmar, it's not for the nationality, for Myanmar. When I say Myanmar, it means that all operators must use this standardized form. They cannot use different from the one we have. So right now we have all the form here. We have port clearance monitoring. We have investigation form. We have explosive ordnance disposal form. We have land lease form. We have baseline form. So please let me share with you that all the form we always attach with the standard, because we already developed our Cambodian mines and standard in place. So all standard on baseline survey, standard on land lease, all attached with the form. the data collecting form. For my action sector coordination mechanism in Cambodia has established three coordination system. One is we call Technical Working Group on Mine Action, TWG, and second we call the Mine Action Coordination Committee, and the third one we call Technical Recurrent Group. So this system has proven functional and efficient, operating effectively at political and technical level. Technical Working Group on Mine Action at the political level, the TWG is led by the government, represented by the CMAA. It serves as the consultative mechanism between royal government, development partner, NGO, and private sector to discuss policy and issue to improve overall sector coordination, promote alignment and harmonization of the aid and external resources for mine action sector to contribute to the implementation of the national mine action policy. Mine Action Coordinator Committee, MACC, at the operational level, MACC is led by CMAA with participation of all mine action operator and partner, and it serves as the consultative mechanism between National Mine Action Authority and mine action operator to coordinate and guide operation toward achieving the goal of the national mine action policy. Technical Reference Group, TRG, this one is technical level. TRG is led by CMA to discuss and seek solutions to resolve technical issues. So right now we have 7 TRG on survey clearance, TRG on explosive ordnance, TRG on building resistance, and the last one is TRG on capacity development. So may you know that those TRG we organize 2 or 3 times per year to discuss technically with the technical people from operator, especially on the data collection on the ground. So if we want to discuss data collection, we need to discuss the form and format also. So the form and format need to agree among operator before we do approval and attach with the standard. So CMA and operator, CMA or operator cannot decide to customize the data collecting form by themselves. They need to go through the TRG. If the TRG do not agree, they cannot use that form. That's why TRG is a platform for discussion and agree together all the technical aspect from the operator. Because TRG, we have member is the operator. Technical Reference Group, TRG, under the CMA coordination in Cambodia have been instrumental in promoting the best practice across various aspects of mine action in Cambodia. Cambodia Mine Action Authority play a crucial role in coordinating and overseeing mine action effort in Cambodia. CMA can establish the national standard, guideline for IM in mine action, ensuring consistency across different organizations. CMA serves as the central hub for data sharing and information exchange among mine action operator, government agency, and international partner. Legal framework, both national standard and national guideline, should be in place for supporting the operation on the ground. CMAA can use the IM framework to track progress toward national mine action goal, such as land target and victim assistance outcome. CMAA work with organizations like GICHD and other organizations to improve its capacity. This cooperation allow CMAA to utilize the most up-to-date method and information management system. By effectively implementing the IAM framework, CMAA can significantly enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the mines and effort in Cambodia, contributing to the country goal and become mine-free. So in this slide, I just want to highlight that discussing, sharing, testing, improving the tool should be done regularly through the existing mechanism. So currently, CMAA, as the national authority, provide technical training and technical support to all operators in Cambodia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you to the CMAA. The sector really needed strong leaders for IMSMACOR to roll out in the way that it is now, which Henrik will cover. But your presentation not only shows the commitment to the capabilities of CMAA's IMSMACOR system, but also to the collaboration and coordination and the consensus building that's necessary to bring all operators into the fold. So, thank you. Next, Clement Meunier from MAG. Thanks.
Thank you, Morgan, and good afternoon, everybody. It's quite humbling to be sitting on a panel with all of those brilliant minds. I will try and offer a maybe more programmatic perspective on information management. And I thought it would be very NDM-like to start with a quote, and a quote always makes presentation important and serious. But I mean, joking aside, I think it gets to the heart of what I will be trying to say today. So not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So I will break down my presentation in 3 parts mainly. The first one will be the challenge for an operator like MAG that we have in aligning data needs and data uses. The third one will be MAG's own journey in aligning data needs and data uses. And then the last one will be the opportunities ahead of us to increase the impact through data. So, as we've been discussing, information management in mine action has always been essential, and that's undisputed. But yet, it's still not easy, right? And the real challenge, we think, is aligning what we collect with how it's used. Decisions happen at various levels: strategic level, programmatic, operations, and each level has its own data needs. And our data must serve a variety of stakeholders: so national authorities, donors, MAG field staff, policymakers, communities, and other stakeholders. So what also needs to be taken into account is that the context in which we work vary vastly. So stakeholders and their needs for data are different whether we work in Gaza today or in Cambodia, for example. So the data that goes in and the data that goes out will never be the same for everyone, everywhere, all the time, and that's okay. And the sector has made great progress to standardize the data and the tools that we use today. And new technologies have, without a doubt, brought about positive change. But integration remains a challenge. How do you... Shoot. So this was a show. I ruined the show. Anyway, so as an operator, we gather large amounts of data, operational data mainly, and we must process it and structure it at a central level, and then we must push it back out so that it informs decisions across all levels for all stakeholders. And at each step, we must ensure consistency, relevance, and usability. And you can see the challenge here. And too often, actually, we collect what's easiest to measure, not always what's most useful. So at MAG, we thought that using the theory of change to help us better align data with the outcomes we aim for was a good start. So for those who don't know, a theory of change is like a roadmap that explains how and why a desired change is expected to happen, and especially also the conditions needed for this change to happen. So for MAG, our theory of change is helping us focus, as Angela was saying, not only on the outputs and the square meters and the numbers, but also on the impact we want to see for communities. We have not developed our own theory of change in isolation. We have developed it based on the work done along the years with our partners and other stakeholders, including donors like the United Kingdom, FCDO, and the Netherlands, who have together developed a sector-wide theory of change for mine action. Also, more recently, Germany has worked together with operators and other stakeholders on shared indicators for its new HMA strategy. And this type of joint effort help align objectives among stakeholders to enhance coherence in the sector. So, based on that work, we've developed MAG theory of change, you can see here. And based on that theory of change, I will not go into the details of it, but we've developed a bank of indicators. And all of these indicators are then used for project design, evaluations, and then they are integrated into our IAM system so that data collection links directly to our dashboards and reporting, and then feeds back into the theory of change. So while this is really, useful, we also thought important to say that, behind every indicator, there are people. So at MAG and with partners and stakeholders, we thought useful to define who actually benefits from our work. So what started as a donor-driven requirement then became a sector-wide conversation, and then an UNMAS technical note. And the results, a more consistent criteria for identifying beneficiaries of mine action activities and ensuring more accurate and consistent reporting. And if it helps harmonize data collection, then at the end of the day, it helps the quality of the work. So in MAG, we're still working on data harmonization internally. For example, we are still working on harmonizing terminology, as Angela was talking about, across our programs for clarity and consistency. We are building systems that work for both MAG and the national authorities. That means ensuring that requirements for both MAG and national authorities are represented in our IAM system, but without duplication. And this work is continuous because we have to respond to ever-changing needs. And in places like Cambodia, as my colleague just mentioned, our systems now synchronizes with each other, and that helps us reduce manual data manipulation. But in other places, we're adapting to national systems and tools, and we're finding ways to make the systems talk. And of course, we're using what's available to us, as was described previously. Our teams in the field are using accessible tools like Google Earth, ACLED, InsoData, satellite imagery to make field work, but even policy work easier and smarter. And not just for HMA. We also use, for example, remote sensing for our weapons and ammunition management work in the West Africa region at the moment. And it's proving really promising results already. So we, as an operator, are often asked to collect more or new data. And that's understandable, because the needs change. But it's important to keep in mind that each new data point affects collection tools, systems, staff time, and workflows. And we must always remember that, our teams in the field are already under pressure. So every new data point collected is a trade-off. So we should carefully weigh the value of the information against the burden of data collection. And let's not collect data just because we can. Data inflation has the potential to weaken quality. UNMAS gives us already strong foundations. Is there room for more standardization in there? Should there be a technical note to encourage more community-centered indicators, just not activity counts? Maybe, but if so, it must be thoughtful, technical, and grounded in reality. And it has to find consistency with the national standards as well. And at the same time, we're already sitting on a gold mine of information. Artificial intelligence, drones, satellite imagery, they all offer exciting potential, as we've seen. But in mine action, decisions can mean life or death. So, these tools should support, but not replace human judgment and verification. And finally, as Angela was also touching upon, mine action data isn't just for the mine action sector itself. Just like we're trying to integrate data from other sectors, mine action data, when we get it right, should help bridge the gap with our colleagues from other development, humanitarian, and peace-building sectors. Because again, behind data, there are people's lives. So just to conclude, I think your sketch, Angela, with the storm and the how do you call this? The umbrella was really useful to illustrate this. This statement. The last thought is that at the end of the day, the goal isn't just better data; it's the better decisions, better policies, and ultimately the better outcomes for the people we serve. That is important. So yeah, thank you very much. And I'm handing over back to you.
Thank you, Clement. I think the presentation really thoroughly exemplified what can happen when something like theory of change or project design is married to the development of the system early on. It ties our outcomes and indicators to the way that we collect data and what data we collect. So it was really well highlighted. And again, we have to think about who our users are and maybe not tailor the data to each user. Maybe start to standardize data so that the different users know what data is available in a standardized format instead of this transposing that seems to be our trend now. Which brings us to me and my presentation. So I want to present to you today APOPO's state-of-the-art information management system that uses a variety of different tools, both inside and outside of Esri, to connect our activities with our outcomes, but also to step outside of mine action and connect our data to, like I said, development projects and other initiatives. This is a snapshot of our animal health and welfare dashboard. And this system was built specifically so that we can deliver on the standard of care that we believe that our animals should have, not just in checking, but also so that when we match the medical records of our animals to through our system, we can actually initiate webhooks that remind our programs when a dog needs medical care or like an exam or an updated vaccine. This is done through a unique QR code that's assigned to our animals that gives them a profile and that tracks them throughout the world wherever they're working. At the end of the day, when the dogs are finished working, their tracks are vitally important to show where in the minefield they have searched. And this year, they're the track processing got a large upgrade when we automated through the implementation of Model Builder, so that our tracks can smoothly flow from the Garmin GPS that we depend on, the T5 collar and the Astro 430 that we use, into our system and automate the buffering that stands for the perimeter of the dog search capability. In Ukraine, we actually came up against the reality of GPS jamming before our operations started. That did not continue to be an issue as we pushed out, but our IM team went to work on coming up with the creative solution of GPS-less offline box gridding of the minefield, so that through field maps we were able to report without any GPS signal or any Wi-Fi dependence exactly which boxes our dogs had searched that day and what they'd found or not found in those boxes. This is an example of our partnership with an agricultural partner who was part of our development impact bond, minefields to rice fields. And here APOPO was also responsible for our agricultural partners' data. So based on outcomes that we had defined before the beginning of the project, we tracked not only our mine action, but also seed subsidization, training and coaching, and then increased income per hectare of the farmers whose land was overlaid that had been blocked by the presence of explosive remnants of war. This also was done through global unique IDs assigned to the individuals inside of families so that we could track the training and coachings. And each family had an ID card so that we really saw their progress throughout the project cycle. And actually, I have been called in years before to consult on humanitarian projects where this unique ID was not implemented. And oftentimes, normal misspellings of names on repeat data entry was losing individual beneficiaries inside of the middle of projects, which creates a massive headache, not just for IM professionals, but also for project managers and program managers at the end of the day. Here's our implementation of some basic remote sensing with droning over one of our MDR, our mine detection rat sites. We've three-dimensionalized it through a digital terrain model that's open source. But through this, our team, our ops manager is able to see which assets are applied where on our task site, which are most appropriate for which assets, which conditions are most appropriate for which assets. And so this is us taking another step towards remote sensing in the sector. Another application of that is that we, in Zimbabwe, sourced 15-centimeter high-resolution imagery from the European Space Imaging as part of the budget for our project, and we paired that with a DA2 Trimble for sub-meter accuracy, so that when we did lane-by-lane reporting, so one form per lane, we were able to accurately geolocate the reporting down to really 30 centimeters. We also used, because we were offline in that task, in that area, we also bought a cheap barcode printer and printed barcodes out for when a device was found. That allowed us so that once detection had taken place, we could put a barcode on the marker, and when we came back to do the DEM, we could call the exact same ID for that device, tracing the device from detection to demolition. And that hadn't been done before either. In collaboration with Cranfield University, we were able to implement one of the most thorough device reporting systems. We collect over 60 data points per device that's found a very comprehensive database. And we collected so much data in Zimbabwe that the trends and analysis kind of became self-evident. We have not used AI for predictive analysis in our work. We use AI Copilot and GitHub for Python scripting, but we're not there yet. And as was just brought up on the panel, these tools are very exciting, but MineAction needs to get their fundamental data right before. We cannot do predictive analysis if we're running models on data that has any error or confusion or margin of geodisplacement on it. And so we really need to think about getting that right before we rocket ship towards the exciting options that are in our future. APOPO is not just MineAction. We have a Hero Trees project. We've planted over 50,000 trees in Tanzania and other countries, primarily in Tanzania. In this project, we're working on developing an API which will coordinate and pull data from earth trees, which will give us ecological data, so soil type, water retention, and carbon footprint on the plots in which we're planting trees. We document the species, and we can do follow-up monitoring on individual plots that we make. But to bring back to the theme of standardization that this panel is highlighting here, this is my attempt to standardize each country's dashboard for our own internal system. So I divided it into assets and activities and outputs. And when I went to do it across different countries, I ran into the same realities that this sector uses as a bit of a distraction from getting a standardized template, which is that everything is custom, all the needs are different, and there's no way to create an aggregated data set. In fact, we did create an aggregated data set. We did it using pretty complex arcade calls from different feature layers in our system. Just like every other organization, the organic development of information management systems across the needs of a program and an organization over time create discrepancies and new layers inside of our system. So we're able to solve that, and it acts in its most basic way as a view layer with a join and relate clause, except we have to call across many different sources in order to get our aggregated numbers. When we finish the exercise of creating the actual visual of the globalized dashboards or universalized dashboards per country program, we went back and started over again with the process of field name normalization, which means that we brought every form from every country that we work in, and we started to match same fields to make sure that we were not duplicating or confusing same fields for activities. When we did this, when we got towards the end, we reached out to the sector in a couple of different directions about what standardized templates are. There are minimum data reporting requirements, and they are helpful, but they don't really necessarily drive a template production or formulate a template production that we can easily rely on as a sector for each new program or initiative that we start in MineAction. That means that every time a new program gets set up, even though I have templates from all the operators at different years in different countries on an external hard drive in my living room, what I don't have is a single template that truly agrees and defines the basic fundamental fields that we're collecting in MineAction. And it's so necessary because it's then left to the whim of the IM technical expert who is trying to roll the program out under intense, usually intense pressure from operations. So that's the initiative, or the challenge and the initiative that I'm trying to bring to the NDM this year. Here are some of the templates. I can show that my work is thorough, that I'm using Draw.io, that we track all of the changes in GitHub, that we continue to, really document and make clean our effort to get to a template that makes sense And I think we will this year. And when I was talking to Angela before this panel, she said we're turning the corner now. And I used to work for MAG, and I know that they went from almost 1 to almost 2, which is a process of turning the corner. And so I think operators are, I hear from the CMAA that they are as well getting real comfort in the alignment of their system, but we need more. And probably even more coordination. And with that, I will hand the floor to Henrik, who will take us home. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Morgan. So yeah, you didn't.
It's the big one, yeah.
That's the big one. So yes, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Morgan, for inviting me to this panel and for bringing up a lot of important questions. I think we've heard a lot of the important stuff here today already, but my plan was to tell the story a little bit from GICHD perspective on how we got here and hopefully where we're going as a sector. And to do that, we need to go around 10 years back, when, at least from the GICHD sides, we were working on, still on NG. A little bit more than 10 years maybe, but yeah, around that. We're still working on NG, and we saw an emerging need from the sector. A lot of implementing partners were starting to build their own systems, collect their own data. We had large issues in the sector with double data entry, where operators were required to collect data, print it out, national authority received it in paper format, and then entering it again into INSMA-NG at the time. So it was pretty clear there was a need for better data exchange between operator systems and national authority systems. We did a couple of efforts to allow that in INSMA-NG. We did a try with something called MAXML, which didn't really fly that well. There was also an online field reports, etc., etc. Long story short, just to say that INSMA-NG was pretty difficult to exchange data with. So when we started to think about the new system, the next generation of INSMA, that was very much a requirement that the new system should be open for exchange of data. And in the end, we went with Esri software, which you know is commercial software, which is compatible with many formats and significantly more open than the former system. About around the same time, there was also a discussion in the sector about starting to standardize data collection, much like we're doing here today, but the previous discussions. It had been attempted before. Global reporting, global requirements had been attempted in the 2000s, early or mid-2000s, I think, and failed. Anyway, there was an initiative back then to start to standardize things. And the result of those discussions and consultations with IM experts, national authorities, various stakeholders, such as the IMS Review Board, et cetera, led to the establishment, development of the minimum data requirements and their adoption in 2020. So the minimum data requirements has been touched on a little bit previously. They were designed to be a minimum data requirements, which was the whole point. It means that it in no way fulfills the reporting requirements of any organization or national authority. The idea is that they need to be built on. But the idea was also to at least have a small core data set that everybody could agree on, that this is actually what we need to report. So anyway, that to us was the foundation of having greater exchange of data inside the sector with INSMA core and the minimum data requirement. The following question was, how to push this out, how to get national authorities, organizations working in mine action to actually use these and implement. I mean, IMAS is a strong instrument, but yeah, adapting systems is also a resource-intensive operation, and a lot of those systems were already established. So it's we could foresee that it would be quite an effort to push it out or disseminate it. So the way we've been working on it is we include it in our trainings. We've been doing it in trainings now for the last, or since they were established. There's always sections on minimum data requirements. We have exercises with the national authorities defining their own national minimum data requirements, as in building on the IMAS minimum data requirement for national contexts, included in our e-learning models. But first and foremost, maybe in our MSMA core implementations, we always start with something we're calling a stakeholder workshop, where we strongly encourage the inclusion of as many stakeholders as possible, which of course includes implementing partners, to define data collection requirements, basically, and based on those design the forms for the program. So that's how they get implemented in new systems. Something that was mentioned also, that's a very strong tool for aligning data requirements in a national context is the technical working groups. So many of the partners we work with have those, and anytime you update the forms, operators are invited to discuss updates. Moving ahead, 10 years until today, with the process to implement IMSMA core is quite slow, I would say, compared to IMSMA NG, which was something we could just come and install, train, and then it was operational. It varies from place to place, but we usually quote around 2 years, to count on around 2 years for an implementation for a national authority, which more or less corresponds to the truth. Also, we have a limited team, limited resources, so it takes time to roll things out. But 10 years or 7 years after starting IMSMA core, we've gotten quite a bit on the way, I would say, and so far we haven't needed to decline any requests. We've been able to meet up at least requests from national authorities to implement IMSMA core. So that's all good. And now I think we're reaching a critical mass where the possibilities of data exchange with IMSMA core is becoming greater, and it becomes almost a global possibility. Of course, there's programs in countries where it's not still not possible, but yes. And we're seeing it actually being adopted. The ESRI suite of tools is being adopted more and more by implementing partners. Some may be ahead of what we've been doing, but it's being picked up in the sector and also outside the sector in the wider development sector. It's more and more the go-to tool, which of course makes it easier to share data with everyone. How am I doing? Yeah. And we're seeing it actually happen. We heard from Cambodia. We heard examples from Ukraine. We have it's happening in Libya, in Somalia, in Lebanon that I'm aware of off the top of my head. There's various methods that's also been brought up, and without getting into too technical means, but Morgan showed some sort of, well, in terms of IMSMA core, but scripting can be used, but we also have transfer tools integrated in the ESRI suite. We can use ArcGIS Pro, and often it's just as simple as sharing a shapefile and from one system to another. So the methods and the opportunities are endless. One thing that's very important for us is to be able to guarantee the safety of data, and especially in terms of national authorities. There's legal obligations that come in play for many, and not everything in every database can be shared, even if the will is there. So that's also something the tools we're working with now permits, that you can give access to your system, but you can block access to whatever data or all data if you need. Then about contextual data, it's also been mentioned here. I think it was also one of the original ideas within SMACOR, and I missed mentioning that, but in my first slide was one of the GIS is inherently geographic, and it wasn't me being lazy sticking in an old picture. It's just referring to, this is something we've presented since the start, and I think that's the essence of, or the vision of IMSMACOR was to have our mine action data and bring out external data combined with mine action data, and with that getting greater insights. And I think we've seen today that we're moving towards that, and some partners are better at it than others, and it's something we've been, as the GICHD, have been thinking about over the last year. It's tricky to find good use cases, I would say. It's a little bit in line with what you said that about you need to make sure that what you're analyzing is also going to be useful or give you useful insights. I'll not be long. So yeah, just to say that data is also, it's available from multiple sources. We've heard it today, everybody knows it, it's everywhere. But also that we've been talking to a lot of non-mine action partners, and there's usually or always a strong will to share data. I would say the biggest challenge with sharing data is the effort and time going into aligning that data with each other's data sets, but also in filtering out whatever is not for sharing. I think I'll stop there so we'll have time for one or two questions. I'll just end with our implementation dashboard to show where we are with the IMSMACOR implementation. So we're working currently with 27 countries, out of which I think it's 11 countries that are actively using at least one workflow, which is that they're pretty much in production with IMSMACOR. We still have 29 countries on NG, so that's where we're going next. But I think, yeah, some of the biggest needs have been met with the IMSMACOR system up to now. And this is a public dashboard available online, so if you want to check progress, just go there. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Henrik. I'll give no synopsis since we're at the end and open the floor to questions. Thanks to the Geneva Center. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Sufyan Al-Sous. I just will start from the last speaker. Thank you very much for your kind information. I have a question. Do you make update from the regards the feedback from your end users or the countries who are using the system? Did you make, or you have a plan to make update according to the information or the feedback from the fields? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, so I mean, doing IMSMACOR implementations, we work with the partners for us, which is the national authorities. And during the process of implementing, we work closely together with our IM counterpart. So it's very much the national authority that defines how the end system will look, with some support and advice from our side, of course. And then, like we said, if we're talking about from the field, it's considered good practice to have this technical information management technical working group where operators or field staff or whoever can give feedback on how the current forms are working, on how the current workflow for quality assurance or quality control is working, and that can be taken in and implemented in the national authority system. So yes, it's constantly being taken into consideration. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Good afternoon, Christine from Norwegian People's Aid. Given that we have all these data sets, that's an open question to you. Could someone tell me what is permissible error in these data sets on what we're looking? Because we seem to be going to centimetre accuracy, which is not really applicable on the ground. Can someone please discuss that?
Okay. When I was discussing sub-meter accuracy, the 15 centimeter accuracy high resolution satellite imagery is per pixel, so it's not 15 centimeters from the ground in relation to the ground. The sub-meter accuracy is with a Trimble DA2 differential GPS that was implemented in Zimbabwe, and I know has been implemented in some HALO programs as well. And it is giving that level of accuracy for points, which we would like for items to be documented down to that level of accuracy, as well as completion reporting, which in the past there's been issues with the original task polygon and the actual work done. So if you send out a deep GPS in your post-clearance completion reporting, then you would have true to, well, as true as under a meter in margin of error. Is that?
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make here is that we're not building nuclear power plants, we're clearing land, and that the amount of accuracy, if somebody needs to go back and do further work on that land or use that land afterwards, they're going to have to require this, DGPS technology to find where your turning points are again, and find where the land is. And with the getting to that level of data, what error is there with all the different other data sets that are coming in together as well, different projections and other issues as well, and how can we verify the accuracy of this other open source information to pull in to utilize and create all these layers? Because if you get two different maps, one from Bing and another one from another source, and you try and line them up, they don't line up.
Yeah, I think there'll always be a margin of error. I agree with you. Not all maps will line up in the digital environment. When we are calibrating our GPSs, like our Garmin's that aren't using DGPS, then we say that 4 to 8 meters in a margin of error means that your GPS is working, and if you're over that, you need to recalibrate and you wait for a minute and try to get it under 4. I don't think that the way I explained the DGPS was comprehensive to the question of refinding the task, though, because the same way that Google Maps helps you find a storefront, it'll help you find what you need there. And more accurate geodata in mine action, especially when we stand behind the quality assurance of our clearance, is imperative if there were an accident post-clearance, isn't it? If there was a victim near that site post-clearance. So I don't think there's any harm in that level of implementation of high-quality geo-accuracy. But definitely when it comes to external data sets, it is my concern what you brought up, and that was kind of one of the things about this panel was, okay, if we're going to start drawing data from external sources and overlaying, which is what we want to do. We want relational analysis. We want mine action to interact with development initiative, with environmental initiative, with even in its response to humanitarian need, right? So what are we all just going to go source whatever sources, or are we going to have a list or a agreed upon source? And now I'll hand it to Angela, who I can tell is.
Thank you. No, I think it's important to understand the accuracy of the data we have, so we need to have the ancillary information about the data, but also understanding which kind of information we are extracting. If we are analyzing the type of soil, it's not changing in a sub-centimeter frequency. So even if the data we are pulling in are not so accurate as the mapping we are doing for mine action purposes, of course the information they provide is still useful. That's why I say we need to understand the format, we need to understand the content of information we have, so we can live with these errors there, but we need to know that they are there, in order to then make the decision on top of this data and understanding the limitation of the information we are using.
Luan, go ahead.
More of a comment rather than a question. The deployment of IMSMA Core as a cloud-based system has opened up the possibilities of data exchange, big scale. The amount of data we're moving to and from IMSMA Core in Ukraine is incredible. It saves time, and the time of potentially 7 to 8 people monthly working non-stop to do that data typing. And we see that in Solomon Islands, in Somalia, and Sri Lanka, and elsewhere. So that's very good. The only request I have, there are more mine action authorities here, is to open up the data sharing with the field operators so that our teams do not walk blindly somewhere where the threat is known, because we do have the technology now to take the data offline as well, so that our teams have almost got a copy of all the data they need at the palm of their hand in a cheap, humble tablet. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
My name is Christine from GICHD. Majority of the presenters have highlighted the challenges that they face in terms of integrating external sources of data. I didn't hear any mention of policy and governance issues of data, because when we bring in different data sources, then it's common that we will face such kind of issues. So have you faced issues of policy and governance of data as you try to integrate other sources of data in terms of sensitivity of data from other sources, especially if it's victim data, and also issues of data sensitivity and confidentiality of such kind of data? Thank you.
I'll just give just a bit of a response on this one. For example, in the case of MAG in the Sahel and West Africa specifically, we use ACLED data on incidents. And some of those incidents are related to improvised explosive devices. But so we use those data not for risk education activities and even less clearance activities in this context, but we use them for policy purposes. So a heat map will give you an indication of how much approximately incidents happened in an area, so that you can use this as a leverage for policy purposes with the national authorities to talk about their treaty obligations, for example. That would be one part of an answer.
Yes, another point on that is not, we cannot probably use all the data that are available or all data other organization is collecting, but we need to agree on what data can be shared, that can be aggregated, that can be filtered. We can eliminate this data that are not they're too sensitive to be shared, but we can still extract useful information from that. Most of the cases, aggregated data are enough for making decision on that data. And we used to sign also MOU with this organization in order to agree on how and which frequency you have to do, not only use it, the already available free for use data that already were filtered on that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming to this panel. I really appreciate your attendance here and the opportunity to speak about synchronizing our standardization efforts in the sector. And the panel will be available. Thank you to the panel also for presenting, and I hope it was a useful session. Thanks.